All right. Good morning, everyone. Salam sejahtera Malaysia, salam perpaduan. Selamat pagi dan mudah-mudahan semua sehat dan baik sahaja. We will now start the session. I have been informed that one of our discussants, Dr. Chin, is in the holding room, so he is occupied at the moment. So we'll just commence the session. Oh, he's here. Okay, I'm sorry, Dato. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. All right, so we have a full and complete panel right now, so we'll start right away. But let me just say a few things about this session. I'll be facilitating the first session, and we have been given the title of Understanding the Rukun Negara. And as the MC has kindly informed and explained, in this session what we will do is we will cover some of the historical backgrounds of the Rukun Negara, look at some of the key principles and ideas, and then of course today we are gathered here to see how the principles are relevant for us today. And when we speak of the Rukun Negara and nation building, I am reminded of our public intellectual and former and writer Rustam Sani, who once wrote that in building our country in the project of nation building, it is not only we cannot only be muddling through, and there must be certain ideas and principles which we build our nation on. So for today, I'd like to first please bear with me. Let me introduce the panel. Today, our presenter will be none other than Prof. Emeritus Dr. Shad Salim Faruqi. I think many of us know him, but just let me say a few words. He is a professor of law at the University of Malaya and am now holding the Tunku Abdul Rahman Chair as Professor of Constitutional Law. Of course, he has written extensively on the Malaysian Constitution, on legal systems across countries, and he has also held the Tun Hussein On Chair in ISIS Malaysia previously. So please give a hand for our presenter, Prof. Dato' Shad Salim Faruqi. You will have about 15 to 20 minutes and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Distinguished organizers, role players and guests, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh, Salam Sejahtera, Ni hao, Vanakkam, Sat Sri Akal, Kopi Bosian, and good morning. Earlier this morning, we heard eloquent comments about the spirit and intent of the Rukun Negara. I wish to take that further by finding a close link, not finding, but by emphasizing the close link between our federal constitution and the Rukun Negara. I have to say this with sadness, that though we are 66 plus years old, knowledge of the federal constitution is not very widespread. I wish to propose something that we were involved in many years ago, unsuccessfully, but wish to propose that the Rukun Negara be legislated into a preamble of our federal constitution. Now, we all know that Malaysia's Rukun Negara is nearly 54 years old. This blueprint for national unity was drafted in 1970 after the convulsions of race riots of 13th May 1969. A National Consultative Council, NCC, of 67 distinguished persons was assembled under the chairmanship of Tun Abdul Razak Hussain, then Deputy Prime Minister and Chairman of the National Operations Council. There were lots of towering personalities, but I won't mention their names. All that I'll say is that the NCC drew from all races, religions, and regions. The ruling alliance, as it was called at that time, and opposition parties except one, the federal and all state governments, including Sabah and Sarawak, and civil society groups and minorities were actively participated in the drafting. Regrettably, women were represented by only 2 members out of 67. Now, the Rukun Negara, sorry, I don't know how to operate this. I'll skip it then. The Rukun Negara had 5 objectives. We all know these. The NCC chiseled out 5 stirring objectives of our nation. Very briefly, they were unity, a democratic way of life, a just society where the prosperity of the country can be enjoyed together in a fair and equitable manner, a liberal approach towards our rich and varied cultural traditions. Please note, the word liberal was used, though I know today it's a dirty word, but the Rukun Negara used the word liberal approach towards our rich and varied cultural traditions. And number 5, a progressive society that will make use of science and modern technology. Supporting the 5 objectives were 5 transcendental ideals or principles, which we all know about because these are the ones that are emphasized: belief in God, loyalty to king and country, supremacy of the Constitution, rule of law, and courtesy and morality. I have to say this with regret, that the first 5 objectives are rarely talked about, and public authorities and school books give attention only to the 5 ideals. I know of many people who think of the Rukun Negara as the 5 principles, and the 5 objectives are conveniently not known. The Rukun Negara was launched by the then Yang DiPertuan Agong on 31st August 1970. Like the Panchashila of Indonesia, the Rukun Negara was meant to be the chart and compass and the sail and anchor of our nation. Unfortunately, it could not be presented to Parliament because the emergency proclamation of 15th May 1969 had suspended Parliament. Now, ideally, the Rukun Negara should have been incorporated into the Federal Constitution as a preamble. But because Parliament was not in session in 1970, and amendments to the Constitution require special parliamentary legislation, the Rukun Negara began its journey as an extra-legal or as a historical ideological statement. It has never been converted to law and is not backed by any sanctions. Perhaps it is time to do that now, given our regression in race and religious relations. Now, in the light of what is happening in our country lately, and even earlier actually, a group of individuals led by Dr. Chandra Muzaffar of Just International brought together a number of community representatives to draft a preamble to our Constitution based on the Rukun Negara and to propose its adoption by the government and Parliament. This was in mid-2016. Tan Sri Michael is not here. I wanted to tell him that, Tan Sri, I was given the task of capturing the high aspirations of the group and adopting and adapting our existing and venerated national ideology as the template for our preamble. We prepared a report and we wrote to all ministers and all MPs. And I'm sorry to tell you, our report and proposal received very few official replies. Only a few opposition MPs replied, the others did not reply. We were of the opinion, we still are, that incorporating the venerated provisions of the Rukun Negara into the opening passage of our document of destiny, our Constitution, will strengthen both documents for the following reasons. Number 1, there are shared ideals between the Rukun Negara and the Constitution. The objectives of the Rukun Negara are substantially in line with the provisions of our Supreme Constitution. In fact, the Rukun Negara distills the essence of our Constitution. It provides a guide to our legislature, judiciary, and executive. For example, the Rukun Negara's supremacy of the Constitution is provided for in Article 4, Clause 1, and Article 162, Clause 6 of the Constitution. Article 4, Clause 1 says, "This Constitution is the supreme law of the Federation, and any law passed after Merdeka Day, which is inconsistent with this Constitution, shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be void." Article 162, Clause 6 deals with pre-Merdeka laws, and of course hundreds of our laws are pre-Merdeka laws during the colonial times. 162, Clause 6 says that if any pre-Merdeka law is inconsistent with the Constitution, the courts have the power to either modify that law or to invalidate it. Then belief in God is honored in Articles 3 and Article 11. Article 3, Islam is the religion of the Federation, but all other religions may be practiced in peace and harmony. Article 11 is about freedom of religion. Loyalty to king and country are required by innumerable provisions, including Articles 32 to 38. Rule of law, and please distinguish the rule of law from rule by law. Rule by law simply means that the law, whatever it says, is followed. Rule by law means the law that is followed must have some idealistic content of human rights, tolerance, etc. So rule of law is implied in provisions for judicial review of governmental action in Articles 4, 121 and 128. Morality is safeguarded by empowering Parliament in Articles 10 and 11 to enact laws to safeguard morality. Democratic way of life is promoted by innumerable provisions conferring personal liberties, Articles 5 to 13, providing for elected and representative assemblies, Articles 44 to 49, etc. Personal liberties, and elected and representative assemblies. Rich and varied cultural traditions are protected by provisions for freedom of religion, right to native languages and traditions, and customary rights. Also freedom of speech, assembly and association, and the special rights of Sabah Sarawak in our federal setup. Let me now say something about our Constitution. Like the Rukun Negara, our federal Constitution supplies the foundation for moderation, tolerance, harmony, and national unity. I'm sure that some of what I have to say to you will surprise many of you. Even in its ethnic clauses, the Constitution reflects a remarkable spirit of compromise, compassion, and moderation. In recognition of the fact that Malaya was historically the land of the Malays, the Merdeka Constitution incorporated a number of features indigenous to the Malay archipelago, among them the Malay Sultanate, Islam, Sharia laws, Malay special position, Malay reserves, Bahasa Melayu as the national language. By the way, in the Perlembagaan, the word is Bahasa Melayu, not Bahasa Malaysia. That's a political usage. Customary laws, rural weightage during elections. However, the Malay Muslim features of the Constitution are balanced by other provisions suitable for a multiracial and multi-religious society. And I know that some of what I have to say will surprise you. The Constitution is replete with safeguards for the interest of other communities, though I know the actual practice shows a wide disparity between theory and reality. Citizenship rights were granted to all persons on a non-ethnic and non-religious basis, Articles 14 to 19. Electoral process. The electoral process permits all communities an equal right to vote and to seek elective office at federal and state levels. Race and religion are irrelevant for eligibility to vote and to contest. Fundamental rights. The chapter on fundamental liberties grants human rights to all citizens, irrespective of race or religion, Articles 5 to 13. Subject to a few exceptions, fundamental rights are available to all persons in this country. Federal posts. At the federal level, membership of the judiciary, the cabinet, parliament, the federal public services, and the special commissions under the Constitution are open to all, irrespective of race, religion, or gender. All this talk that the Prime Minister or the IGP or the Chief Justice must belong to a particular race, this is all politics. It has nothing to do with the federal Constitution. Except for the post of the Yang DiPertuan Agong at the federal level, all other federal posts are open to all citizens. Education is free at the primary and secondary level and is open to all, irrespective of race or religion. However, university education is subject to quotas, Article 153, Clause 8A. But to open up educational opportunities for non-Malays, private schools, colleges and universities are allowed. Foreign education is available to whoever wishes to seek it. Vernacular education is permitted. And by the way, the duty or the right to safeguard vernacular education does not only belong to the vernacular groups, but also to the federal and state government under Article 152. Under Article 152, Bahasa Melayu as the national language, it says, federal and state governments may take action to promote vernacular education. Financial assistance for education. Malays as well as non-Malays are eligible for government education scholarships. Protection during an emergency. Even during an emergency under Article 150, some rights like citizenship, everyone's citizenship, religion, language, everyone's religion and language are protected by Article 150, Clause 6A against easy repeal. The government cannot declare emergency and take away these rights. Sabah and Sarawak special rights. The spirit of give and take between the races, religions and regions is especially applicable to Sabah Sarawak. These states enjoy special legislative, executive, judicial and financial powers. Article 3, Clause 4. Article 3 is about Islam. Article 3, Clause 4 says, though Islam is the religion of the Federation, nothing in this article derogates from any other provision of the Constitution. In other words, Article 3, Clause 1 on Islam does not obliterate, does not violate any other right or duty or institution or power or procedure. Malaysia is not a theocratic state. The Constitution is supreme. The case of Che Omar Che So. Religious freedom. The Sharia does not apply to non-Muslims. Vernacular languages, I mentioned, there is protection of vernacular languages. Under the Education Act, if 15 kids in a school demand facilities for a vernacular language, the school has a duty to provide for vernacular languages. Malay reserves. Though Article 89 reserves some land for Malays, it is also provided that no non-Malay land shall be appropriated for Malay reserves, and that if any land is reserved for Malay reservation, an equivalent amount of land shall be opened up for non-Malays. Article 153 on the special position of the Malays is hedged in by limitations, limitations not very well understood. Along with his duty to protect the Malays and the natives of Sabah Sarawak, the king is also enjoined to safeguard the legitimate interest of other communities. Secondly, the special position of the Malays applies only in 4 prescribed sectors and services: public services, permits, scholarships, and post-secondary education. But even in these areas, the Constitution in Article 153 uses words like, in such manner as may be necessary. reservation for Malays and natives of any of the states of Sabah and Sarawak of such proportion. Proportion means absolute monopoly is not allowed. Such proportion as he may deem reasonable. So the Yang DiPertuan Agong is advised to act as may be reasonable. This means that Article 153 can be reinterpreted to take note of need instead of race alone. All in all, I think the spirit of the Constitution was one of moderation, inclusiveness, and tolerance. All in all, unity does not mean uniformity. I think that was the spirit of the Constitution. Mr. Chairman, I'll just take 2 more minutes. The various communities were allowed to maintain their distinct ethnic identities, cultures, religions, languages, lifestyles, dresses, food, music, vernacular schools, etc. The country is a rich cultural mosaic. Instead of many other countries where a melting pot philosophy is adopted, we adopted a mosaic. Then there is politics of accommodation. In addition to the above legal provisions, the rainbow coalitions that have ruled the country for the last 66 plus 2 years, 2 pre-Merdeka years, are built on an overwhelming spirit of accommodation between the races, a moderateness of spirit and an absence of the kind of passion, zeal, and ideological convictions that in other plural societies have left a heritage of bitterness. Using the economy to unite the people. I was in Bosnia, and in Bosnia they asked me, or they mentioned this point, that Malaysia has used the economy to unite the people. And finally, I wish to say, sadly, we have suffered regression. Since the 90s, racial and religious polarization has reached alarming levels. Ethnic and religious ideology and racial politics is causing a hardening of cultural boundaries. We have become a nation of strangers. In many corners of the world, walls of separation are being dismantled. Sadly, in our society, these walls are being fortified. The task of restoring the spirit of tolerance and accommodation is an arduous one. We all have a role to play. It's not just the task of the government. We all have a role to play. As a beginning, let us improve constitutional literacy and incorporate both parts of the Rukun Negara, not just the ideals but also the objectives as a preamble to our Supreme Constitution. Thank you very much.
Professor Shad Faruqi, your presentations and discussions has always been thought-provoking and insightful. And you've outlined some of the objectives, ideals, and you've tried to draw similarities between the Rukun Negara and the Federal Constitution. You've discussed some of the indigenous features, safeguards, and then outlined some of the challenges and prospects in going forward. I thank you very much. So now, let us move on to the discussion session where we will have 3 discussants. The first discussant, Tan Sri Dr. Omar Abdul Rahman. Let me briefly introduce him. He is the founder of chairman of Dialog Rakyat Organizing Committee, and he is one of the champions of the Harmoni-Mesra concept. He has also been instrumental in universities and also one of the founders of University Pertanian back then, and then the Academy of Sciences Malaysia. So Tan Sri, you have 8 to 10 minutes. So without further ado, please invite you to share your ideas and your discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Teo. Hadirin yang saya hormati sekalian, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam Harmoni-Mesra. Professor Dr. Faruqi's presentation just now on Rukun Negara and linking its 5 principles or ideals to those of the Constitution clearly affirms its acclaimed status as a blueprint for social harmony and national unity for Malaysia. However, 55 years after its launch in August 1970, social harmony continues to be constantly under threat, and national unity cannot be taken for granted. Recent events, especially the Saltgate affair, being a jarring reminder of the fragility of both. As a nation, we have been constantly reminded of the 5 principles or ideals of Rukun Negara, but neglecting to equally promote its objectives. As a result, many are not aware of the very important 5 objectives which Professor Faruqi has just elaborated. I consider the 5 objectives of the Rukun Negara as the first expression of our national aspiration, which in essence is actually HPPS, a harmonious, prosperous, progressive, and sustainable Malaysia, which is a recipe for Sejahtera Malaysia, aman dan makmur. There have been several other articulations of our national aspiration as enunciated by the political slogans of the various governments over the years. Vision 2020, One Malaysia, Ekspresi Negaraku, Transformasi Nasional are all elaboration of HPPS. Keluarga Malaysia was an emphasis on the harmonious component, and the current Madani Malaysia, which comprises sustainability, care and compassion, respect, innovation, prosperity, and trust, is also an expression of HPPS, heavy also on the harmonious component, because care and compassion, respect and trust are both requirements for and the outcome of harmonious. I am advocating a constancy paradigm of embracing HPPS as the core components of our national aspiration based on the objectives of Rukun Negara, however way it is articulated in a political slogan. This would facilitate monitoring, evaluation, and augmentation of policies, implementation strategies, and programs in political, economic, social, and STI development. There are 3 requirements for the harmonious component: satisfying basic needs, improving quality of life, and the socio-cultural, religious values and practices of the citizens. As for basic needs, the UNDP Human Development Index, which captures 3 dimensions of human development: long and healthy life, being knowledgeable, and decent standard of living, give a score of 0.803 for 2022-2023 for Malaysia, which put Malaysia in a very high human development category. It can be argued, therefore, that basic needs are not a major pressing issue in Malaysia at the moment. And the unity government's Madani economic framework is a policy for both satisfying basic needs and improving quality of life. What is not receiving enough attention is the socio-cultural and religious values and practices leading to the persistent threat to social harmony and elusive national unity. The portion of the harmonious pillar needs urgent attention and action to counter the pestering racism and other persistent causes of disharmony, and the emergent vigilantism must be nipped in the bud, as has been urged by concerned citizens. This forum can contribute towards finding solutions for Sejahtera Malaysia, as demanded by Rukun Negara. And one such action is the Harmoni-Mesra concept, principle, and practices, which I will elaborate in the next session. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Tan Sri, Dr. Omar, for very concise and meaningful discussion on the concept of Sejahtera Malaysia, Rukun Negara, and the Harmoni-Mesra concept. He has also spoken about the HPPS and the importance of monitoring and also evaluation of policies. Now, moving on to the next discussion, Dr. Chin Yusin. Let me just briefly introduce him. He has been active and has conducted studies and traveled in many countries, 22 countries, and covering 6 continents on various topics and issues. He has been involved in the One Belt, One Road initiative. He has also participated in conferences in China, organized by the South China Morning Post, and also a prolific writer of many books, and also a practitioner of culture, writing poems and also stories. So let me invite Dr. Chin Yusin, the president of Malaysian Strategy Research Center, to present his thoughts and ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Teo.
Testing one.
You think Malaysia have the true unity? By looking at this, we still have the what I call the Ministry of National Unity. So we can see that after 66 years of independence, we still have to promote national unity among all races. And then today we are holding this national seminar on this unity, also show that we still got much to do to promote national unity among all races. So I think we should do something for this nation, because you look at any nation, if there is no national unity among the races, there will be no political stability and the people cannot live in peace. And there is also no progress and no development in that country. You can see many countries in the Middle East always engage in fighting, so the countries are always not living in peace. So I think national unity is very important. So talking about Rukun Negara, I got a few suggestions about Rukun Negara, because our Rukun Negara started in 1970, 31st of August, pronouncement by the Yang DiPertuan Agong. But this is compared to Indonesia. Indonesia actually promoted the idea of this Pancasila. What do you mean by Pancasila? Panca is a Sanskrit word. It means this what I call 5. Sila, Sanskrit word also, it means principle. That means 5 principles of life. This actually, in fact, this idea was promoted by President Sukarno, the first president of Indonesia in 1945. It was actually become a preamble to the constitution in 1960 under President Suharto. Why I know this Pancasila so well? Because when I studied my economic degree in Indonesia University, one of the subjects I had to pass is this Pancasila. That's why I'm suggesting to the government or to the Ministry of National Unity, we have to put Rukun Negara as one of the modules for all our graduates, irrespective what courses they are studying, whether they are studying engineering, law, medical degree, or social science, or architecture. Everybody need to pass this Rukun Negara. At present, Rukun Negara only we study in the primary school. Primary school, I don't think they can appreciate so well what's done by Rukun Negara. Actually, you study deeply about this Rukun Negara, you will find that Rukun Negara is a very comprehensive or very holistic 5 principles of life. Very important. First thing, percaya kepada Tuhan, believe in God. I think this is very important. Indonesia only talking about ketuhanan yang Maha Esa. That means you believe in one and only one God. That means normally referring to Islam. But Malaysia one is more multiracial. The God can be the Allah also can be the Jesus Christ or other religion. Also, they also call them God lah. So this one is more multiracial in nature compared to the Pancasila. So I think Malaysia is quite good because if anybody got strong belief in religion, so there will be a purpose in life. That means you know what is the purpose of life. If there is no belief or any religious belief, you don't know what is the meaning of life also. Everybody know that one day everybody have to die, but if you don't have religion, you don't know what is the purpose of life, then what is the meaning of life also. Either you die early or die later, what is the difference? To those people without religion. True or not? That means everybody got limited time in our life, so we have to do something in order to fulfill our mission in life, so that before we passing off to another world. So I think this religion is very important. That's why I say this Rukun Negara is very meaningful. First thing you talk about, you must have meaning in life, and also you must do good to anybody, so that if everybody well behaved, the whole society will be peaceful and everybody will be united also. That's why this belief in God is very important. Secondly, you're talking about loyalty to the king and country. This is very important also, because if there is no loyalty in any person, they don't love this country, they will try to incite racial disharmony. They will try to destroy the nation because they don't belong to this country. So why do they care? They simply make statements about 3R issue. They don't care whether this statement will hurt the country economics a lot, will hurt the country political stability a lot. Like recent case, you know lah, no need to mention the name. So I think this is very important. So this loyalty to the country, that means everything must come, the country must come first. Your communal interest or your individual racial interest should come second. So this, if everything like that, Malaysia will be very united and very peaceful. Thirdly, we're talking about keluhuran perlembagaan. That means supremacy of federal constitution. This Professor Sheikh Faruqi has mentioned this one very clearly. This is very important because in any society, there must be rules of law and federal constitution to guide the behavior of the people, so that they know certain boundary they cannot cross over. So that's why this is very important. The federal constitution is the supreme law of the country. It's the highest one. Any law in conflict with this federal Article 4, Section 1 will be void immediately. So this supreme law of the country is very important. Secondly, talk about kedaulatan undang-undang. That means talk about this the rules of law. So rules of law, that means is anything is secondary to the what I call federal constitution. This one is more details law to govern the behavior of people and what sort of rights you have and what sort of right you don't have, all these things. So everything is spelled out clearly. So even the traffic offencer is considered under the traffic law. So the fifth one is not about kesopanan and kesusilaan. It means this is called the courtesy and morality. This is very important because the law can govern certain things that is spelled out clearly in the rules of law or in the federal constitution. Anything not written there is not considered governed by the law. You see? That means you can be sometimes you can be legally right, but you can be morally wrong. You see? So you need the law and the morality to govern the behavior of people. Because law cannot govern everything, you see. Because sometimes legally you are not wrong, you see, but morally you are wrong, you see. Just like I say, anything not spelled out in any sort of act of parliament or anything, you're not considered legally wrong, but can be morally wrong, you see. So that's why you need the combination of law, the federal constitution, the law and the moral to govern the behavior of people. So that's why this is very important. See, that's why I suggest that the Rukun Negara should be made as the compulsory subject in the university education, because it's very important. Because when you are young, primary school, the time when I studied primary school, the time I know all these things, but I don't know what is the meaning also. See, so until I grow older, then only I understand the beauty of this Rukun Negara. Actually, it's very comprehensive, even better than the Pancasila. Because Pancasila to me, I feel is not so complete also. Because Pancasila, you talk about first thing the ketuhanan yang Maha Esa. Then they talk about the what I call the unity of Indonesia. Then you got civil rights treatment for all what called Indonesian. So the one is more specific, but this our Rukun Negara is more comprehensive, cover all aspects of life. So that's why I think Rukun Negara should be a compulsory subject for all these university graduates. So another thing also, it's a high time that because of this so many issue, 3I issue how to, why the Malaysia is so divisive, mainly because of politicians and political parties. Actually, I got many close Malay friends like Professor Quadri is my good friend. We work together to do business also. We got no problem because only politicians will highlight the differences. That's why in Malaysia, in order how to reduce the tension between races, first thing you must magnification of similarities and minimization of differences. This is a Chinese philosophy. Then when you sort of do this thing, then you wouldn't have any problem. That's why the first thing, you must do away with all the single racial-based party. That means you have multiracial-based party. Once a multi-racial-based party, you will stir up the issue because in the party you need to be elected. You need the support of all the racial from different members, from different races. So when you are from a person is from a single racial-based party that don't care because they want to be the champion of the race, so they will raise up so many issues like KK mark issue, all these things. No doubt it's a religious thing, but some people do it with hidden agenda, to become the champion of their own race. So this is the reason why Malaysia is so divisive, mainly because of this what I call single racial-based party. There's a problem. You have multiracial, like Adira, you can see, like DAP, all these things. There's certain touch on the racial issue because they cannot. Once you become so racial, what do you come to the party election, you cannot be elected. So another thing also, the press also play a very important role. That's why I say the press should report more on the what I call social unity or national unity issue rather than play up the issue, especially the 3I issue is very sensitive. So that's why I see it's high time for Malaysian government to sort of register an act called the Act of Parliament or this Racial Relationship Act. This is very important, I think, because once you have this racial relationship, anything you say, something is wrong, you can be charged immediately. Like now still got a lot of this, what I call the boundary is still not so clear, you see. Many people play up the issue for political gains. So that's why once you have this Racial Relations Act, so you know that what to say, what not to say, what to do, what not to do, then I think our Malaysia will become more united. I think my time is up already. Okay, so I continue afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chin, for your presentation and for your sharing. He has tried to argue how making the Rukun Negara as a compulsory subject, if I understand it correctly, is important. He has talked about some of the links between stability, unity, development, and peace, and also some comparisons with Indonesia, which is a very interesting example of our neighbors, and also how certain behaviors of certain people contribute to certain situations in our country. Right, thank you very much, Dr. Chin. Now, moving on to our last but not least discussant, Dr. Ahmad Badri Abdullah, who is Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the International Institute of Advanced Islamic Studies. So let me just introduce him very briefly. Yeah, so he has an interest or focuses on the fields of Maqasid Sharia, Usul Fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, as well as also public policy. He has studied and also worked in universities such as USM, University Science Malaysia, University Malaya, and also he has written articles on very diverse themes, including legal theory of Islamic law, public policy, Islamic banking, and science, technology, and the environment. So without delay, let me invite our last discussant, and Dr. Ahmad Badri, the podium is yours. You have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Yang berbahagia Profesor Emeritus Datuk Dr. Syed Salim Faruqi, Profesor Emeritus Tan Sri Dr. Omar Abdul Rahman, dan Profesor Datuk Dr. Chin Yu Sin, So I feel very great honor to have the session with esteemed speakers and also discussion this morning. So indeed, it was a very eye-opening and very thought-provoking presentation by Prof. Salim Faruqi. And in dissecting the driving philosophy underpinning Rukun Negara, I think it becomes evident that moderation stands as its cornerstone of the principle through our engagement at IAIS Malaysia as a think tank, a vibrant platform for discussion on social harmony and also interface dialogue. Then we have our friends here, Dr. Farid and Mr. Andrew Koo, who cooperate with us to organize so many interface dialogues and discourse on social harmony. I have the privilege to dive into numerous perspectives and ultimately would like to conclude that Rukun Negara serves as a robust advocate for moderation. And there are kind of a symbiotic relationship between Rukun Negara and moderation that engenders a reciprocal reinforcement, creating a virtuous cycle of societal equilibrium. So I would like to outline 6 key points elucidating how Rukun Negara champions moderation very briefly. We know that originating from the esteemed fourth Duli Yang Maha Mulia Yang DiPertuan Agong, the late Sultan of Terengganu, Rukun Negara was introduced in 1970 amidst escalating racial tension by then. And despite its historical significance, many, I think the Malays remain unaware of this pivotal origin and underscoring the need for broader dissemination of knowledge regarding the origin of our Rukun Negara. And central to Rukun Negara ethos is the cultivation of what we call in the text as a liberal society, one that characterized by a profound respect and acceptance of diverse cultures and tradition. I think this ethos transcends mere tolerance, fostering an environment where Malaysians embrace, understand, and appreciate the richness tapestry of our cultures and tradition. And anchored in democratic ideals, Rukun Negara enshrines fundamental rights of freedom, including freedom of expression, political participation, dignity, and also transparency and integrity. All these democratic values and principles inherently inclined towards moderation and fostering an inclusive and equitable society. Rukun Negara serves as a catalyst for progress. So, the word of a progressive society, and by fostering a climate of conducive situation to innovate in order to bring about economic growth. And Rukun Negara lays the groundwork for societal stability and a prerequisite for the realization of moderation. And embracing Malaysia's unique social political landscape, in this sense, Rukun Negara encapsulates local values and realities, celebrating the national political structures, societal norms, and also the religious diversity. And last but not least, on my 6th point, at its core, Rukun Negara's inaugural principle of belief in God, like being touched by Professor Chin just now, safeguards the religious freedom and plurality, affirming the rights of individuals to practice their faith without fear or discrimination. This foundational principle is pivotal in fostering a climate of mutual respect and understanding, which is fundamental to moderation, which comes back to my original thesis. So in parallel, it becomes apparent that moderation, and by extension, the moderates, rely on Rukun Negara for sustenance and support. There are 3 points from me. First one, without Rukun Negara, as a guiding principle and overarching framework, the moderate approach would lack the requisite legitimacy and authority. Without Rukun Negara, the moderate approach will not have the significant, legitimacy and also the authority to operate in our society. And secondly, Rukun Negara as an ubiquitous presence in Malaysian society ensures widespread awareness and acceptance of its tenets. Students from the primary school already aware of the existence of Rukun Negara. And this is a very powerful tool for the moderates or the moderate approach to lay the groundwork for the early adoption and internalization of moderate values among citizens, fostering a culture of inclusivity and harmony. And thirdly, as a cornerstone for interpreting the Federal Constitution, as mentioned by Prof. Salim Faruqi, Rukun Negara informs the development of policies that espouse moderation across various domains, including economic development, religious affairs, racial relations, and also education, and so on and so forth. By aligning policy initiative with the principle of Rukun Negara, I think Malaysia can move closer towards the realization of truly a moderate society. Having said that, we need to be aware of the challenges that we are facing. According to the 2016 survey conducted by the Oxford Balvenie School of Government, demographic division continues to be a major obstacle in developing healthy inter-ethnic relations in Malaysia. Malaysians, in this sense, do not have much opportunity to foster inter-ethnic interaction and friendship due to the lack of diversity in their neighborhood, school, and workplace. Our young generation, they don't have that much opportunity to interact between, across ethnic lines. And it is great to hear from the minister that, PLKN will be revived with new modules, and at least it will allow the youth to have meaningful interaction with each other from different ethnic, religious, and economic background. And maybe I would like to propose that it might be a worth consideration for the government to maybe could introduce Rukun Negara to kindergarten or preschool student with a suitable module. At least they know it from the very beginning of their life. But like Professor Chin said, maybe the meaningful understanding of Rukun Negara may be later, but to make them aware, maybe from the early beginning. So I think that's all from me. Some of my sharing of thought and aspiration. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you, and terima kasih, Dr. Ahmad Badri. So he has highlighted a few key issues on the importance of having platforms, interfaith dialogue. He has also spoken about moderation, how it's in line with the Rukun Negara and the Federal Constitution, and also outlined some of the points for sustenance and support. And he ends by speaking of the challenges that our society and nation face today in terms of division and also racial conflict, for example, or disagreements. Right, so now we have reached the end of the presentation session. Now we will have some time, I believe, for discussion and Q&A. So each of our speakers have provided very insightful and critical thoughts and perspectives from their respective points of view. So I'd like to invite, if anyone has any questions or suggestions, there's one there. You can go to the mic, I believe, to please introduce yourself, where you are from, and maybe address to our speakers if there is a specific panel, or if it's a general question, please share there's a general question. Yes, we have one there. Any more?
Thank you very much, moderator.
Right.
I have 3 questions for Professor Shad Salim. Professor Shad, you confessed that your group trying to make the preamble in the Federal Constitution, and you had very poor response from the ministers and the MPs, but you are not giving up. So may I know what is your specific strategy to get them on board? Do you have hope that they will layan you lah? My second question is, you very carefully said Article 3, Malaysia is not a theocratic state. I noticed you evaded the use of the word Malaysia is a secular state, and I can understand why. But later on in the next slide, you did say that Malaysia, secularism and religion live side by side. And I think that's one message Malaysians really need to be educated on, that secularism is not anti-religion. Because most Malaysians believe that secularism is against religion. But I notice you stayed away from making a statement that Malaysia is secular. My third question is, can atheism be practiced in Malaysia? It's not a practice. Can Malaysians be atheist or not? While I have the microphone, I'd like to thank Datuk Chin, Major Chin, for lamenting the fact that certain things are morally wrong but legally right. To me, that's one of the most frustrating things about our life. And I think we should take every effort possible to make anything that is morally wrong also legally wrong.
Right, thank you very much. May I please ask again that if you have a question, please introduce yourselves and the organization.
I'm Dr. Narima. I represent G25 with my chief there.
Okay, thank you very much, Dato. And also, please, may I ask that you, if possible, please keep your questions or thoughts concise and brief and address them directly. So we have one from there, and maybe one or two more. Can we take any more questions for our other speakers, Tan Sri, Omar, and Dr. Chin, and also Dr. Ahmad Badri? Are there any more questions? No? Then, okay, maybe we go to the first one first. Prof. Shad?
Yeah, I hope I understood your questions well. The first one was about what possible strategy needs to be adopted in the light of the fact that the government did not respond to the NGO effort to incorporate the Rukun Negara into our constitution as a preamble. I personally believe that we all have a role to play, and our strategy should be that even in the absence of a preamble, in our home, in our neighborhood, if we are a teacher, as a teacher in the school at any level, we should show respect for all. We should educate our children, our students about the goodness that exists in all cultures, all religions, rather than rely on stereotype prejudices. Now, I have children who went to school in PJ and KL. They came back and said, Cikgu kata cannot send Chinese New Year cards, cannot send Deepavali cards. And I tell them, well, I have to disagree with you, Cikgu. I think most of these prejudices are born out of ignorance. So the answer is we need better education. I know primary and secondary schools have become too communal. But at the same time, let's remember that education begins at home. All of us can play a role in our home. We can play a role in our office or in our place of work. So I don't have any strategy for any grand strategy for us, except to say we should practice what we are preaching here. And I think that would make a lot of difference. But of course, as far as the government is concerned, there is much the government can do. It could reform primary and secondary education. There is no need for new laws, I believe. There are plenty of laws, a whole plethora of laws, from Sedition Act to Communication and Multimedia Act, and so many other laws actually. The main problem is that these laws are not adequately and equally enforced. So over the socks issue, there was clearly incitement to violence by many people, and yet somehow they escaped prosecution. The IGP made a statement saying no police report was filed, I don't think there's a need to file a police report when a crime is committed. The raison d'etre, the reason for the existence of the police is to enforce the criminal law of the land rather than to wait for somebody to file a police report. And if police report is necessary, ask a police officer to file a police report, as that happens quite often. So I think there's a great deal that can be done. I agree with the proposal this morning made by Tan Sri Michael, Equal Opportunities Commission, a National Harmony Act. But I believe leaders can play a great role. I quote Jackson from the United States, who said, leaders of substance do not follow opinion polls. They mold opinion, not with guns or dollars or position, but with the power of their souls. So that's in terms of strategy. Then there was this question about Article 3, Clause 4. Article 3, Clause 4 comes in the article where Islam is declared to be the religion of the Federation. But Article 3, Clause 4 says, nothing in this article derogates from any other provision. I think the Constitution meant to underline this fact that we are not a theocratic society. Now, what's the opposite of theocracy? Many of you will say secular. I personally don't like to use the word secular or theocratic. These dichotomization, I don't like that. I think Malaysia is neither a full-fledged secular state nor a full-fledged theocratic state. I think we are somewhere in between. We are hybrid. We are legally pluralist. It'll be difficult to say Malaysia is a secular state when I could be arrested for khalwat. I could be arrested for not saying my Friday prayer. You don't do that in a secular state. So it's not, for the Muslims, certainly it's not a secular state. But for the non-Muslims, I think it's primarily a secular state. Most of the laws are made by elected bodies. Then the final question, I'll be very brief on that, atheist. The Constitution gives freedom of religion in Article 11, freedom to believe, freedom to practice, and subject to some limitations, freedom to propagate. There's no mention of atheism. And in many other parts of the Constitution, it says, nobody shall be compelled to receive an education in a religion other than his own, which means you can be compelled to receive education in your own religion. There is a case of Nur Liana binti something. Nur Liana's father was unhappy with the way Islam was taught in the schools. So he went to the school and said, I'm going to teach my daughter religion on my own, in my home. I don't want her to attend your religious classes. The teacher said, the principal said, all right. So Nur Liana absented herself from class because under Article 12 of the Constitution, religious education of a child is in the hand of his parent or guardian. But when the exam came, Nur Liana didn't sit for the exam. She was given a 0, a failing grade. Father went to the court and said, I had instructed. Sadly, the courts decided against the parent and against the Nur Liana. So I'm sorry, my answer to your question is, there is no explicit right to atheism. In fact, the Rukun Negara, the first article there is belief in God, and then of course the Constitution at several places is religion other than your own. In other words, for your own religion you can be compelled. However, the silver lining is, I do not know of any cases involving non-Muslims who are punished for being atheists. I don't know. There may be a few. But when it comes to Muslims, the situation is entirely different. Yes, that's all.
Thank you very much, Prof. Shah. Now, Doctor, you want to say a few things on the difference between legal and the moral?
First thing, talking about this belief in God. Just like I was mentioning this Indonesia, one and only one God. Ketuhanan yang Maha Esa. Esa means one and only one. In Malaysia context, it means believe in God. God can be Tuhan, can be believe in God. Tuhan can be what I call the Allah, can be the Trinity of God. For Christianity, is a Trinity of gods. There's only one, not only one God, is it? So other religions like Buddhism, actually Buddhism not even a religion also, but it's more like a belief. So the other Hinduism, this what I call Sikhism. So this one, that means Tuhan can be many different gods to different religions. So I think this is very clearly that Malaysia is not what I call, Malaysia is an Islamic country, but not an Islamic state. What is the difference? Islamic state, that means legally you are an Islamic country like Pakistan, like Saudi Arabia. Country can be just the majority of people is the followers of this Islam. It's called an Islamic country, not a state. When you talk about state, it's a legal state already. That means legally you are Islamic state. So that's why Malaysia never mentioned that they are Islamic state. We are Islamic country. That is one thing. So just now you're talking about the morality and legality. So this one very difficult to sort of make everything morally wrong to be legally wrong, very difficult, because then our law become very bulky already. Then for lawyer to practice law also very difficult, because they have to memorize so many things, search for so many sections, all these things. And this is practically not possible. That's why whenever in any country, you need two things or three things to regulate the behavior of people. First thing, you use the legal rule of laws to regulate the behavior of people. Second thing, anything the law cannot reach that one, then you use a religious teaching or morality to what I call control their behavior. Because I give you examples like, let's say somebody come in to ask you, want to look for somebody. Actually, he meaning is want to kill him. Then you say, oh, this fellow is not around. I mean, legally, morally he's wrong, but legally he did the right thing. I mean, if he mentioned the fellow is inside, how he would get killed, you see? So this is one thing. This, like spitting on the ground. In Malaysia, is not, legally it's not wrong, you see? In Singapore, you can be fined, but Malaysia, it's not, you would not be fined, you see? But only morally you are wrong, you cannot spit on the ground. But legally, you are not wrong, because there is no law to say you cannot spit on the ground. Another thing also, let's say you steal something, when nobody see you, you are not caught red-handed, that means you are not wrong legally, but morally you are wrong. Because anything you do behind the back or anything nobody can see you, the law cannot catch you, because for law you must have caught red-handed or caught you, with witnesses or something like that. We cannot simply just catch him. Okay, I think there's time is up already. Whispering to me.
I'm so sorry. I have to interrupt Dr. Chin. So unfortunately, time is envy. So I have to close the session. But maybe I'd just like to invite Tan Sri Omar, if you have anything to say, or Dr. Ahmad Badri, if you have anything else, maybe 30 seconds, Tan Sri. Okay, I'm so sorry, I apologize. But thank you very much. We have heard very good presentations. Thank you for your participation and for your attention. I hope this conversation will continue, not only into the next session, but further on, and we will speak more of the Rukun Negara, and hopefully we will create a better country and society for every one of us. So please join me, give a round of applause to our speakers. Thank you so much, and I hand back to the MC. Thank you so much again. Thank you.